Let's talk a little bit about armor. No, not that type of armor. Nope, not that type either. We're talking about underbody armor. When I bought my FJ with 345,000 miles on it, it did not have any of the original underbody armor. At some point, someone must have done some maintenance on this vehicle and pulled it off. So today, we're going to put on some ARB body armor for the undercarriage. And the reason we're going to do that is to protect it from rocks hitting the oil pan or hitting the transmission or breaking the transfer case. These are things that will absolutely disable a vehicle like this one in a heartbeat if you hit a rock. I already have some level of armor and protection. I've got these rock sliders here, and directly under that, I've got some skid plates for the rock sliders themselves. You may be asking yourself, why did I choose to go with the ARB armor? Well, it's lightweight. That's the #1 reason, and it'll offer me just enough protection so that any rock that comes along isn't going to totally disable my vehicle. It may leave a couple of dents and scratches on the body armor, but isn't that what it's for? So for the light off-roading that I'm going to be doing, these are going to be perfect. Not only am I going to show you the procedure of putting that body armor on and the skid plates on, I'm going to weigh them and show you everything about them. So without further ado, let's get started. Here's everything that comes with the ARB skid plate set. It starts at the transfer case and it goes all the way to the front of the radiator. It includes this hardware kit as well as this specialized mounting bracket. The kit does not come with hardware to attach it to the car itself, so if you're missing the original screws, you're going to have to get replacements. Total weight for all these components came out to 48.8 pounds. That's very light for a full set of skid plates. Use 2 screws and washers to secure the back of this front skid plate. Then you're going to use a spacer and a 70mm screw with a spring washer and a flat washer for these 2 holes, using this slot and this slot. Here you have that socket head cap screw, that 70mm, and then inside you've got the spacer going into this holes in the frame. Once this front piece is mounted very loosely, attach 3 of these cage nuts to the rear of the plate. Don't drop these behind the skid plate, otherwise they're going to be a bear to get back out. Now mount the second skid plate. Put 1 screw in here and another screw over on here. That's going to be part of the lower control arm mounting position toward the rear. Then attach the transmission skid to the engine skid with 3 25mm long screws that were supplied, along with a lock washer and a flat washer. All of this needs to be finger tight. Now we're going to throw another M8 cage nut into the center part of this transmission skid plate. Put it on the back side of the plate. Now at the cross member, right before the transfer case, we're going to put a cage nut on the right hand side in this round hole. Not sure how that's going to prevent that from spinning. I guess we'll have to hold that by hand. And then over here on the left-hand side of the vehicle, you've got this heat shield. We're going to pull these 2 screws here out, and we're going to use those holes to mount the other side of this mounting bracket for the rear skid plate. Use a 12mm ratcheting wrench to remove the original screws, and then a 13mm to put these back in. And then a 17mm to put these, and torque these down to 44 Newton meters and 22 Newton meters. We're now going to add the spacer, and we're going to put it right where these 2 little holes are. And we're going to use this screw here. It's an M8 by 20mm. They're the shorter 8mm screws, along with a lock washer and a flat washer. And then we have a flange nut that we're going to put inside here. Now you may be wondering why I'm calling these screws instead of bolts, and the answer to that is because we'll be turning these fasteners as opposed to turning the nut, which is what you usually do with a bolt. Now ARB calls these bolts, but I know they're screws. Watch my video on the difference between a screw and a bolt if you're interested. I just secured this final shield using a 8mm by 25mm long screw with a lock washer and flat washer to the center point where we already had a capture nut on the previous plate, and then the same configuration except on the back side Of these outboard ones, I used the flange nuts. The final step is to secure this back plate with two M8 by 25s, again with that lock washer and flat washer, to these two holes here in this mounting bracket that we put on earlier. Use two flange nuts on the top of the bracket. This transfer case shield uses 4 of the screws in the transfer case. They're going to be these two out here and these two under here. You can't quite see them. And we're going to remove the original transfer case shield and retain those screws and put them back into the transfer case. And then the backside transfer case shield screws we're going to use to secure the front side of this transfer case shield. Now torque all of your M8 bolts to 16 foot-pounds. This skid plate set definitely loses a little bit of clearance, about 1 inch across this cross member here, and then probably close to 2 inches right here at this exhaust. Yeah, that's just not gonna do. I think surgery is in order here. If I leave it just the way it is, that's taking up almost all of my front suspension lift. Losing 2 inches at the center of the car gave me heartburn, so I decided to cut off this section which fits underneath the exhaust pipe, and that allowed me to use the lower holes here, which reduced my clearance from 2 inches to 1 inch loss, which is much better in my opinion. It also reduced how far back toward the center it goes. So now I'm very pleased with this installation. You lose about 1 inch all the way from the back to the front of the car, which is appropriate. That'll give you enough room in case you hit up against rock. It'll deflect some before it actually makes impact with any part of your vehicle. So great installation. Love this ARB. For the cost, I think is a solid piece.
This is such a gorgeous view from up here. This is Kiev Peak, otherwise known as Squaw Peak, in the Utah Valley, Salt Lake Valley. Take a look at all this armor we've put on. I love this FJ.